Hey there, folks. Chris McLean, Peak Performance and Transformation Coach, back with another episode of the Peak Performance and Predictable Growth Show, the Peak Performance show for creative agency founders, owners, and leaders, where we explore the agency journey from the unique perspective of those at the coalface of the industry. My guests help us unlock and dissect strategies, tools, and tactics from the trenches that are working right now to help you deliver better results for your clients, as well as grow and scale your agency to 6 and 7 figures and beyond. And it's my pleasure today to welcome Veena from Digital Street AU onto the show. And Veena is a growth-driven marketer and founder of Digital Street. She has over 14 years of advertising experience and has led million-dollar campaigns for agencies like Leo Burnett, McCann and FCB. And Digital Street AU helps e-commerce brands in the fashion, beauty, lifestyle, and fitness niches to scale and grow to 7+ figures. All sounds amazing. Veena, thank you for joining me. Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much, Chris, for having me.
Absolute pleasure, as always. Now, let's start where all good stories start. Tell us, how did Digital Street come about? You sounds like you were ex-agency. Were you part of sort of big agencies in the past, and then you started your own agency? How did that come about?
So I worked in global markets like India, Dubai, Singapore, and now Australia. So it was a very natural progression, Chris. Basically, I've always been in agencies. I've always done advertising. So I didn't know anything else. And when agencies were making that transition, they still haven't really made the transition fully from your traditional agency to a digital agency. I saw an opportunity there. And also the bigger thing is I was in Dubai at that time. My son was very small and I felt I've spent enough and more hours, leading big campaigns on major clients. I just wanted to do something where I had that flexibility. So I started my own business first, which was again, and I'm talking about 2012, around 2012. And I went into a digital platform and I learned all about digital marketing. And I was burned by an agency myself there, which claimed to be a digital marketing agency. And that's when I started learning things. And I said, all right, now I have to, since I've learned these skills, my friends started asking me, who were also at that time not seeing results with their digital campaigns. And that's how, gradually I started freelancing for friends in Dubai. Then I moved to Australia, where I really formed the entire agency, Digital Street AU. So in short, this is how I, went from a traditional agency to starting my own digital business.
Yeah, well, what years were you in Dubai?
So I think we were around 2011 till 2016, around that time.
Okay. I might have just missed you. I was there from 2012 to 2018. I was in Abu Dhabi for 4 years, and then I was in Dubai from about 2017 to 2018.
Oh, so I actually also another thing I was doing in Dubai was I ran another storytelling program for children, which took off. It actually, I think, started my entrepreneurial journey somewhere. And because I don't know if you know these stats, in Dubai at that time, and about 2011, kids would read only 7 minutes in 1 year. And being an advertiser marketing person, I saw a lot of potential in that. So in 2017, in fact, I was in Sharjah for the Sharjah Literary Book Fest, where they invited me, especially from Australia, to conduct a few workshops for them over a period of 10 days. So yes, and that's why I think I learned a lot about the digital space, working on that business as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's always a lot happening in that. I mean, Dubai is one of those places that's kind of always seemingly pushing things forward and trying to be on the cutting edge of everything. Whether they achieve that all the time or not is maybe questionable, but they're definitely always pushing into that space. And definitely, I mean, I was working in Dubai it would have been 2017, 2018 in one of the big agencies there. So we probably crossed over at part of that time. My fiance lives in Sharjah. So there you go. Yeah, might have been walking around all the Emirates together at some point and never known it.
Or watching the fountains at the Dubai Mall.
Yeah, super popular there.
Yeah.
So you had a really interesting background, and then you brought that to Australia. So 2018, 2019, is that when you made the move to Australia?
So we moved to Australia in 2016, but
Okay.
March 2016. So it's exactly been 5
Right.
years now that I moved to
Okay.
Australia. And for the first couple of months, obviously, you're busy settling down, and you're trying to find ropes in a new country where, as you know, the weather is so drastically different from Dubai, especially when winters are like killing, and you don't have winters in Dubai. So just treat. I still have some of my clients from Dubai where I was working with them, but then the time zone got really difficult for me to manage. And finally, I started reaching out to clients in Australia. And 2017 beginning was when I formally formed Digital Street AU, and I wanted it to be, because again, that thing about local and being in Australia was something which I really wanted to focus on. So 2017 beginning is when I launched the company properly.
Formally. And did you find that global experience helped in attract, either sort of in the client acquisition, attracting clients part, but also just in building a proper client facing agency, and having had both that big agency experience, but also being, Dubai itself is a very cosmopolitan, globally facing economy, and very, very multicultural, diverse nationalities in that country. So you probably dealt with a lot of people. Did all of that aspect help in starting your agency here?
Absolutely. So one thing I must say, Dubai is far ahead of Australia, or Middle East overall is far ahead of Australia in the digital space. There are things they did 5 years back are still not here in Australia. So, you had souq.com. You don't have a version of a souq.com in Australia, or a rebonds.com in Australia, even till date. And I'm talking about those are big, there. So that really, really helped me, in fact, because I had my experience in India, Singapore, and I was always working on global brands like the Coca-Cola, or Coca-Colas of the world, or the Hewlett Packards of the world. So those, plus my global experience in Dubai, digital experience rather in Dubai, really helped me reach out to clients, because when I would cold pitch to clients and I would suggest things, they hadn't even heard of in Australia, so they wouldn't even know. And especially, here, the e-com space, it boomed last year. It didn't boom as much, even if I were to compare it to the US market, or the Indian market, or the Dubai market, e-commerce is still so not there in Australia as compared to these other markets. And when clients see that you're bringing that to the table, they understand, because they also want to quickly start keeping pace with global markets. And I think that overall experience really, really helped me. And that's my differentiating factor as well. Because you see, again, I'm in my early 40s, and I have a huge range of experience behind me. And when you talk to, when clients see those flashy, I spent $200 and make $20,000 in my sales kind of things, they of course get lured into it. But when they speak to that, and nothing against the 20-year-olds or the 25-year-olds, so I just want to put forth it there. But when they come to someone experienced, they can feel it that that there is something more that's going to come onto the table for them, rather than just some screenshots. So that's again a big factor for me.
Yeah, I mean, you've got that credibility, that longevity. You've actually, I mean, I'm a similar age to yourself, sort of early 40s, but you've got some, compared to someone who's just starting out, who may be amazing at what they do technically. Yes, you bring 20 years of experience, right? And that stuff you can't buy. You can't buy that experience. That's something you can literally only experience by doing that. And particularly someone like yourself, who has that global exposure, who's had big agency exposure. And that's another really probably interesting part that sort of helped you just to structure your accounts, right? Structure how you work. It sort of, did you find that having that big agency experience helped in that, just structuring how you work with clients, structuring the deals, structuring your finances, even just in your own systems and process and your financial understanding and all of that stuff that's kind of very natural in a big agency. A lot of agencies that don't have that experience kind of miss a lot of that, particularly like just basic like financial management and metrics and that kind of thing. Did you bring a lot of that to your own business?
Yes, I did. The processes. You cannot, so I started in Australia as a freelancer and then moved to an agency owner because of my circumstances and whatever. But one thing which will always help you sustain, anyone can grow a business. The challenge is, I think, more how to sustain it, how to sustain that growth and grow further. So one biggest thing is processes, and no one can match big agencies in the processes. And that's what I learned from big agencies. The entire process from a client meeting. So, I don't see people doing minutes of the meeting anymore, right? But this is something which is ingrained into our agency system, because if we've had a client call, we will have an agency meeting, minutes of the meeting. Anything as simple as a minutes of the meeting, whether, so if XYZ joins in their team tomorrow, everyone is on board as to what is happening. Then, these are basic things, right? But they're forgotten, or smaller agencies or haven't adapted it as well. So that's one example. Secondly, the entire briefing process, and then the deliverabilities. We have such amazing tools today like Trello, Asana, Slack, for communication. But when I come across agency owners, they're not using it to its potential. And I'm talking about days when we just had Excel sheets and we used to do everything out of those, and still we managed large businesses. And I'm talking about hundreds and thousands of campaigns with millions of dollars behind them and across platforms. So yes, processes is something which that's one thing I get in for my clients as well. Second big thing is, so in a big agency scenario, clients are treated according to the revenue they bring in, right? So if someone is bringing, say, $1 million revenue to the agency, will always be treated far better than someone who's just worth, say, 600,000 or so. But when you work with boutique agencies like mine, and this is one experience I've realized, is treat all your clients equal in terms of what you promise them. And that's one thing which, because the churn rate in big agencies is so high that when the pitch happens, you get to see the senior management. But when the account is won and you just are interacting with junior management, that experience of XYZ years is lost for a client. And I think that's that. And I saw that again as the need gap for both small and big clients. And that's how, so when you have someone in my experience coming in and chatting with the client on weekly or monthly basis as per their contract, it certainly adds more value to their business. And I think that again helped me to identify certain need gaps and build my business around that.
Yeah, that's a really, really important aspect. And that is that trade-off between being just another number with a big incumbent and being part of it, being $1 million client versus someone that's got a smaller budget. There can be that thing. And definitely with pitching, the senior team goes in and you get their heads and all these amazing people pitch you on the dream, and then they all disappear the next day. As soon as you win the account, they're too expensive to actually spend on the running of the campaign. So they disappear. And exactly like you said, all the juniors actually run the campaigns. So that's I think that exactly what you said, that is the benefit of somebody coming to work with someone like yourself that has that experience, but then is going to bring that strategic edge, that pitching, that quality, that high-level senior experience up the front, but then also be present all the way through the execution. I think that's a really interesting vacuum. That's a great space that agencies you can sort of fill in. Do you think that's what do you think is the future of big agencies like that? Is that one of the things that eventually will kind of erode business away from big incumbents like you McCann's, or will they exist for more traditional versus the more agile nature of things like digital? How do you, as someone that's sort of been in both, how do you see that future of big incumbent agencies versus more the boutiques?
I think big agencies need to adapt faster than they are, because we have so many smaller players mushrooming up every single day. I get emails from new agency owners. Can you mentor us? Can you do this? Blah blah blah. So they are, and there's no dearth of talent, and
Yeah.
that's really I'm talking about. Especially cost in today's times is a major factor, even for big clients. Having said that, the Coca-Colas, the Adidas, and the Nikes of the world will always go, or would want to go, to an agency of repute. So the size of the agency might not matter, but the credentials of the agency will matter a lot,
Yeah.
even in
Yeah.
this space. So yes, bigger agencies need to maintain those credentials. They need to make sure that they are, they are innovative enough, and that's why there's a lot of stress in big agencies on awards. They are still important to big agencies, because that's how, all the big brands want to be associated with an agency of repute. So yes, big agencies, yes, but a lot of they've also changed a lot in terms of their structures. So traditionally, where we would have, like, a client services director, account managers, and account directors, those roles are I think slowly merging into more they're becoming more fluid, and they are not and they're also becoming much more I wouldn't say easier, much more expertise driven, in the sense that they also prefer, because when I was a freelancer, I was working a lot with agencies, and the big ones as well. And unfortunately, I realized a lot of people, even the at senior level, didn't know as much as in the digital space as they should know. And maybe that was my advantage, because running your own business and learning on the job and learning those skills. So what I feel now is that they need to recruit that kind of talent. That talent is expensive, and that talent eventually, working after a few years, goes and opens their own agency. And I think that's going to be the new challenge for agencies worldwide, whether big or small, is to find the right talent, and to keep that talent with you, to make sure the talent that you train within the agency stays with you long enough to get you that ROI.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So there is, we were talking about this before the show. This idea is the laptop lifestyle and wanting to have this freedom that comes with being your own boss and having that autonomy. I think particularly the younger generations that are coming in, that will be recruited into these big agencies, they desperately want that autonomy. They need to feel like they have ownership over their life, over their schedule, over how they work, over what clients they get to work with. All that kind of stuff's becoming much more imperative for particularly millennials and Gen Z. That's part of their decision matrix for where am I going to work and what am I going to do. So I think that's an interesting place where those bigger agencies are going to have to adapt to. We're going to get these people in, we're going to train them up, and a lot of them, if the culture doesn't shift, if that big agency churn and burn culture doesn't quite rapidly change, that talent's going to get trained up, get all the skill set, and then move up, like you said, and start their own shops and become competitors. So I think it's a really interesting next few years, even the next 5-10 years, of how big incumbents are able to shift that culture. Personally, I say that, like, there's a lot of that toxic burnout culture in big agencies, and the rates are insane. The burnout rates in big agencies are like 77% odd. It's not small levels. It's like, that's most people. All right, most people are just getting psychologically, physically, emotionally drained, which comes down to just the culture of the place and the systems and the process. So I think that's a really interesting kind of hotbed of how are agencies going to adapt, particularly, again, now off the back of COVID, people working from home, diversified workforce. How do you see that playing out at both levels, at agency level, but then for someone like this yourself that has the opportunity to kind of poach that really good talent and offer them more of that autonomy, more of that human culture?
So two things are there. As you said, agencies have that really toxic culture, and people wanting to, leave that competition, that long hours, and unfortunately, when I come across kids from agencies, they say they're not learning enough. It's like one of those typical memes. What your expectations are and what is eventually given to you. So,
Yeah.
and that's why maybe, what's your expectation and what your life really is. So there's a huge difference between expectation and reality. Having said that, there is still a charm for them to work in a big agency, maybe because somewhere it's a little more stable for them. Especially post-COVID, during COVID, we saw that, smaller agencies that couldn't sustain shut down, and some grew, some shut down. So that's like the way things are. But I think what is eventually going to happen is that we are going to see more and more agencies mushrooming up for sure. And agencies that are going to niche down, that are going to specialize, are the ones that are going to survive. So if you have an agency that says that they do everything, yes, they might find more clients, but then, those days of jack of all trades and master of none are gone. Or you have, if you're doing everything, you need to make sure you have the right team to do it for you. How I see agencies progressing, growing, the agencies that should grow is to focus on one aspect or niche down completely their expertise, because it's again that example we generally give. A GP or a general practitioner can just take his clinic to that certain level, but a surgeon will always be able to take his practice to the next level. So that's the key difference between agencies that are mushrooming up and bigger agencies.
Yeah, so you think there'll be that kind of the death of the full service agency that does everything, or will it be they offer full service, but the structure of that organization is more of the, like you said, that kind of condensed, that sort of compressed account management. It's more about the suit, right? They're more a suit agency that then essentially outsources the work to get that work done by specialists. So they can kind of have mastery by having specialists that deliver for them, but maybe sort of sit as that catch-all for the big brands. I think you're 100% right. There's still that a big brand like Nike just wants to be. They want a McCann, they want an Eric, they want that big brand match because they feel like they're getting. That's just right. They just need to have that match. Sometimes they'll use boutiques for specific services, for interactive or emerging tech or something like that. Even for social, a lot of them might go down to specialist agencies, but there is that match there. You see that perspective that they'll become more that sort of account management suit type setup where they'll outsource a lot of the actual work.
So what I've noticed, like, and this is happening for the past 8 to 10 years now, big agencies have started having their own digital arm, their own PR arm. So, it's Ogilvy PR or Ogilvy Digital or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
So they are diversified. They are subdividing their agencies, but are they really getting the right talent, or are they getting good enough talent for that? Another question. Or do we have, never in the history of agencies we have seen so many agency building courses crop up. So everyone is, if you log onto your Facebook, you will get, and I'm not kidding, I get 10 ads a day. When I mean 10 ads, I'm not.
Yeah.
So how to take your agency from $0 to $1 million and blah blah blah. So we've never seen this in the history of agencies, right? We've never had so much. And social media or digital, it's so wide open to everyone. You just need one Facebook account, one Instagram account, and you think and you post two. So you post two memes, and you think you are a social media manager, right? You boost a post, you become a Facebook ads manager. You run a smart campaign on Google, you're a Google ads manager. And I'm talking about talent at this level right now. And this is where, unfortunately, I'm not saying there's not good talent, but unfortunately, people with half-cooked information are somehow more visible than people who are really talented or people with expertise. And I think that's
Mm,
a bigger challenge in the industry. Again, it's not about finding clients for an agency. If you get your processes right, get the right team, and it's the biggest challenge today to find the right team for your business. Um,
mm, mm,
and that's not just for large agencies, it's for boutique agencies, it's for medium-sized agencies, it's for small agencies across the board. And talking about so-called suits, I think their roles have evolved or should be evolving, because there was a time when they were just seen as courier boy or courier girls, where they would just go to the client, take your creative, get them approved,
mm.
the changes, get a slap down from the creative. Why have you got me to stay again?
Yeah.
But now, if their role is becoming more and more important, because digital is such a dynamic space that if they don't know what's happening on a client's account, and if they are the direct, contact, then your business is lost. Because if they can't convince your client that, why your ROA is low today, or why you need to spend more, and if you spend more, this is what is going to happen. If they cannot convince a client, it's very easy to lose a client today. So I think roles have changed. People with expertise will be seen. People who are actually willing to grow their expertise and stay relevant, adapt. Agencies, in fact, are the ones that should survive in the future, or are going to see better growth in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still a really, really dynamic environment out there. Yeah, I mean, I started my agency in 2002, and we sort of saw digital rise. I guess having been around digital for 20 years, you're like, everyone knows digital, right? Everyone understands it, but that's not necessarily the case. And I keep a lot of time just having to remind myself that there's big companies that still just don't get how this stuff works and what it is. And you combine that with, as you said, the barrier to entry to become a Facebook manager, to become a digital marketer, to start an agency, to even start onboarding clients is very, very low now. It doesn't take much to get that skill set at a basic level. And there's a lot of charlatans maybe in the industry that are happy to go out and just kind of start getting clients without really knowing what to do. But I think that's also really interesting, that the whole space is evolving and adapting, and it's really agile. And eventually, hopefully we sort of start to sort the wheat from the chaff, and those like yourselves with the experience, with the credibility, that are actually delivering results on the back end are the ones that are going to be able to build that, maintain that long-term longevity business. As you're saying right up front, that is the critical thing about not just getting started and getting a couple of clients, but doing that every month, every year, every decade. That longevity requires a different skill set.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've seen so many times in all these Facebook agency groups where someone would just put a random post that I've got a new client. How do I run Facebook ads for them? What strategy should I use? I mean, when you spoke with the client, you should have thought about these things then. Now, and this is unfortunate, and this is really, really unfortunate, because we come across so many clients who've been burned by these fly-by-night operators, or people who just don't know their job, and that's the unfortunate part, because and that gives a bad reputation to the industry. It's like and it becomes very difficult when and that's why people want to go to an agency with credibility, and that's why you think when you go to a McCann or a Leo Burnett, at least people will know their job, and that's irrespective whether they know or not, is completely, but at the back of your mind, they would.
It's an assumption.
Yeah, that's an assumption. But how many people can afford, how many brands can afford those agencies is another question. So yes, that's again, a big question mark. And these are some of the challenges which agency owners, especially boutique agency owners like us, face, because we come across clients who've been like burnt once, twice, thrice, and then they say, we don't know whether you are the right fit. Even if we instinctively feel you're the right fit and you have all your credibility, but we hope we are not burnt again. So, then we come up with different strategies to help them out. We tell them different ways that, if we don't get your results in 2 months, 3 months, our contract is under review. And again, that's another strategy, because there was a time when agencies would take about 15% of media buying, or 7.5% or 10%. Now all those numbers are going down. And clients are using that to their advantage. So I've heard some clients are even forcing agencies to take about 2.5% or 3% of media buying, depending on the ad spend. So yes, these are some of the challenges that agencies will continue facing. And of course, there is more I think flexibility in terms of where you can work from today, and more acceptability for that, which is great, especially post-COVID. So when I started with my home office, people used to wonder, oh, home office, what is that, and all that. So last year changed everything for us in that sense. Yeah. People are like, okay,
the norm now.
Yeah, you can work from home. So I think that's one good thing in the industry that's happened.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, really interesting conversation. I think there's such a dynamic playing field still out there at the moment, and that balance between, if I'm a client, where do I go to spend my money? They said that there is that assumption that say I've got the budget, I can go, if I go and drop that in a McCann or a JCB or a BBDO, I'm going to get better service. That's not necessarily the case. You could drop that money with somebody like Veena, who has that experience, but is also actually the face of the business and has that expertise. It's going to go all the way through that customer engagement and not just be up the front end. So yeah, really interesting time, and hopefully people like Veena and her business get to rise above and start to pick up more and more of that business as people work out that there are some mavericks out there that are maybe a bit detrimental to the industry, but there are some really solid stalwarts out there that have that experience, that are genuine about helping grow the business. So yeah, really been a really interesting conversation, Veena. If people want to connect with you, find out more about you, where's the best spot for them to come and find you?
Sure, thanks, Chris. So they can connect with me on LinkedIn. Then they can go onto my website. I think all the details are showing up on the screen right now. And LinkedIn is a good place because I at least like to keep my business contacts there. So I think that's one of the best places to reach out to me.
Awesome. All those links will be dropped in the show notes for those of you that are listening and not watching the screen at the moment. So go connect with Veena. Yeah, super interesting conversation, Veena, and I love your background and your history and your expertise. I'm sure things are going to be amazing for you going forward, and I really appreciate you dropping by and spending this chilly Melbourne afternoon with me on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. It's really really a great opportunity to express how agency owners, especially agency owners like me, boutique agency owners like me, feel about the industry, the challenges we face, the challenges our clients face, and the evolving nature of our agencies. So really glad to be here, and thank you so very much.
Absolute pleasure. And yes, I think it was a fascinating conversation, and hopefully more of these conversations happen, right? And that's a large reason I set up the podcast, was to have a space for a lot of these conversations that tend not to happen, to have a space for them to sort of breathe and to get an understanding of what this industry looks like, where it's moving, and how to position yourself within it to take the most advantage. So yeah, been a fascinating conversation, and thanks for dropping by. Thanks to everyone out there in podcast world, in YouTube, wherever you're at listening to this. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.
Thank you.